Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. So guys, we are here today for our full mid-season review. That means we are going to be running through a quick run through of all the 12 races to date and a kind of quick talking point that me and Ash have from the race. Then we are going to move on to our view of the season so far. Me and Ash are kind of do a little chat on that, and then rounding things off, we will both pick 2 winners and 2 losers from the season so far. Don't forget guys, if you like what we do on this channel, give a thumbs up on this video and subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification, and that lets you know when all our latest content comes up. And follow us on our social media channels at Fanatics F1, and for all the F1 fantasy, at Fanatics_F1_Zach. Should we get going?
Definitely. So, where should we start? Nice and simply, Australia. So, should we go with my talking point first or your talking points first?
Let's go with you first. Yeah,
okay.
We'll let you start.
Fine. We'll start with Australia then, and the big talking point from my perspective had to be how early in the season Ferrari went for team orders in favour of Sebastian Vettel.
Set the precedent early, didn't they?
It did, yes. So, not even really giving him a chance to get his feet under the table. First race in, Sebastian's faster.
Not very surprising though, because Ferrari usually do go with a number 1, and Leclerc always was, being that massive junior, only his second season F1. Not too surprising from a Ferrari perspective, but it's still a little bit funny to watch.
And yes, Ferrari do always have the idea of a number 1 and a number 2 driver. We got used to seeing it with Kimi being the number 2, but I don't remember Kimi being told in the first race of the season that you're going to start as the number 2 already.
Set the bar.
Exactly. So that was the big talking point for me, and
my talking point was K-Mag and Haas. And little did we know after this Australian Grand Prix the woes that would be to follow the Haas team, but K-Mag actually finished best of the rest, and the Australia spec car that still to date is the quickest model finished quicker than everybody else on the best of the rest pack.
Well, fantastic finish there for K-Mag then, wasn't it?
Certainly was.
Let's move on to Bahrain then, and I think I'll let you go first on this one because I know what you're going to say.
Well, Bahrain, we can only talk about Leclerc, the one that was so close but yet so far. He had been superb in all practice sessions. He had been superb in qualifying, securing his first ever pole, becoming the youngest ever pole sitter, I believe.
I think so.
He's either 1 or 2, but he's certainly one of the youngest ones. He's in that top 5. And then the race had driven an absolute perfect race before. I believe it was a power unit issue, wasn't it?
Yes.
And he could do nothing but just coast that car around, and then the Mercedes hunted him down, and luckily there was a safety car at the end with double Renault retirement, wasn't it? At the same point, which saved him from losing, because Max would have got that podium otherwise, wouldn't he?
He would have. And
a little consolation.
It was, and it was one of those where I think everyone watching that race was willing Leclerc to get that win, and it was just unfortunate. And as you said, power unit issue. The one thing that must be said about that though was he still used that power unit in China.
Yeah.
So they rectified the issue.
Yeah.
It's one of those, it's a harsh one for him, wasn't it?
Well, I think that's pretty much summed up Leclerc's season of near misses marred with errors as well.
Well, speaking of errors, my talking point was Sebastian Vettel's spin in his race combat with Lewis Hamilton. Now, you were saying about Leclerc dominating through practice. In general, Ferrari dominated. It wasn't just Leclerc. Vettel was up there as well. And when you're looking at a team sport like Formula 1 is, in terms of the Constructors' Championships, you want your second driver to be able to get you those points consistently as well. And at this stage we didn't know that Leclerc was going to have the power unit issue, but you would have been relying on Vettel to have being the person that picks up the points.
Well,
later
yeah, with Leclerc's power unit issue, it could have easily been Vettel winning, and
Exactly.
I think it buoyed Mercedes massively. This, although second race, could almost be seen as a turning point, especially for Ferrari's pursuit of Mercedes this year, because and a track that they were so dominant at, Mercedes picked up a 1-2.
And it's not the first time this season that that's happened. So it was a case of, well, driver error for Sebastian Vettel in that case. They're once again under pressure from Lewis Hamilton, and the better driver ultimately
Comes
got the
out
better
on top.
result. So it was
Harsh but fair, probably.
fair, exactly. So moving on, we got to China now.
I'll let you go first.
Mine had to be the performance of Alexander Albon. Not only did he start in the pit lane, this is a rookie, ended up scoring points, and it wasn't high in the points, I'll make sure to add that, but this is a driver in his first season in Formula 1, and at this time last year he didn't even know that he was going to have a race seat in any form of motor racing for this
Exactly.
year. So to be able to take that step up to Formula 1 and to have a performance like that, especially after the crash he had, it was pretty spectacular. It was just a great performance, and one that he's consistently shown throughout the season.
Yeah, I think it set the tone for him and his aggressive overtakes. He shows that in wheel-to-wheel combat, essentially with cars, he's more than matched to guys already on the F1 field, and that is only a strength that may help him in the Red Bull seat that he now occupies.
Definitely, and it is one that I would say is well deserved. So, well done, Alexander Albon.
Ashley was right. We just didn't know he'd be right this quickly.
Yeah, not even I thought I was going to be right this early on.
Yeah, Helmut Marko, ruthless as always.
Let's just put out there though, this isn't a guaranteed Ash is right. He's got the seat for the rest of the season.
Correct.
It's not confirmed.
It was 2020
for
predictions, so any three of those drivers could realistically be in the seat for 2020.
And potentially someone that's not one of those three drivers.
Correct, could be a other. But back onto our Grand Prix, where again, as we always do, we get a little bit sidetracked. So China, the 1000th ever Grand Prix, and what a history it's been along the way. May it be another kind of 1000 Grand Prix realistically. They did kind of heavily emphasise on it, and so they should. 1000 in anything is amazing. And yeah,
Admittedly, the race didn't live up to the billing of the 1000th Grand Prix, but
yeah, obviously you would have loved the 1000 Grand Prix to be an utter memorable race, and it wasn't necessarily a classic. It was another Hamilton win and another Mercedes 1-2. But guys, 1000 Grand Prix is amazing, and we cannot wait to watch just the next load of 1000.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, probably in our lifetime, with the amount of
potentially.
with the amount of Grand Prix. Nah, we'll be dead. All right.
Here it is.
So we might get to one at 500.
21 races a season, 100 in 5 years, 50 years. Yeah.
It's a push.
It's a push. It's a push.
We
I'm
might-
trying to do numbers again.
Oh.
We should be staying away from them.
Sack off numbers and Ash.
Okay.
Baku.
Baku. I think you're going to go first.
So Baku for me was again Ferrari, a circuit where they had the natural pace, and they did not capitalise on this, with this being Bottas winning, but Leclerc was probably the man who had the pace all weekend. He was going into that last session, but for me this was the highlight of, like we spoke about, giving those team orders and being the number 2 driver so early on the season put him so much pressure to want to perform, because he put a time on that was ready to get him into Q3, but then was pushing when he didn't need to, ends up in the wall at the castle section, and then never recovers, because on a street circuit we all know so difficult to overtake, and it is, well, yeah, so important for qualifying position. And starting P10, he was never going to be able to, without obviously incidents within the race, capitalise on them. I can't actually remember where Vettel was. Did Vettel have an even worse qualifying? Did he not make it out?
No, he had an okay qualifying. It wasn't.
Might have been 5th or 6th.
Yeah, it wasn't a spectacular qualifying, but it was also a case of then in the race itself, Ferrari extending Leclerc's first stint, and yeah, it just. They were extending it to try and give him an opportunity to come out ahead of cars, but they then carried on to extend it even after both Mercedes cars had overtaken him.
Well, yeah, they missed their window, didn't they? And it just completely stitched up his race. Because he had good pace in the race as well. Again,
he did. He was definitely up there in terms of lap times. For me, though, I think the standout point from Baku was the full emergence of Bottas 2.0. So we'd had glimpses of it. We had Australia where he had fastest lap, pole position, and winning the race. But first corner, didn't give Hamilton an inch, did he?
No.
He made sure that he won that corner, and it was fairly won, which was great to see. Hamilton did come out after and say maybe he needs to be a bit more aggressive towards his teammate now, which
was good because it showed that he started viewing Bottas as a challenger. And at this stage, guys, obviously things to come hasn't necessarily panned out that way.
No,
In the first 4 Grand Prix, we were going, are we getting another Mercedes title challenge with drivers against each other?
Exactly.
Is Bottas going to have that edge that can push Hamilton all the way?
Yeah, and it would have been great had that continued, but we have to stick with that race was a fantastic performance in every aspect by Bottas. Off the line, got away fantastically, won the first corner, made sure Hamilton was behind, and then drove a standout race, really. He defended brilliantly, and there were times where Hamilton was coming at him quite fast, but didn't back down. So it was, at this stage, full-on Bottas 2.0.
It was indeed. I think that moves us nicely on to Spain, so race 5 of the calendar year, and the only talking point for me has to be Haas, in terms of they had brought upgrades. They were looking for a strong race finish, actually. They had Magnussen running in 7th and Grosjean running in 8th at the race when the safety car was out. Then after the late safety car had come in, Grosjean and Magnussen collided for the first time, and yeah, some on-track battling which was not respectful for each other, and made Gunther Steiner very angry and have to call a team meeting. Yeah, it was probably the start of when the tension between Magnussen and Grosjean really escalated, and Grosjean dropped back to 10th in that. And for a season where Haas weren't necessarily doing great, it was really frustrating to lose out on those points that could have really meant a lot in the constructors.
And at that stage, they, as a team, they were looking mid-pack.
They were okay.
It wasn't.
There was a good performance here, wasn't there?
Yeah, and at that stage, it wasn't what's turned out to be how their season's gone. And there was still a lot of promise from that Haas car. So,
like, we had the early stages of, obviously they had massive Saturday pace, and the Sunday not being able to get the performance out of the tyres to continue there. But they weren't in the state that they are going into the summer break.
But for me, we're in Spain. This was the Mercedes dominance, and this was the 5th race we had this season where it was Mercedes 1-2. They matched Williams' record of consecutive 1-2s from the start of the season, which I don't think any of us predicted, especially when you look at it that there were 2 races in there where Ferrari should have and could have easily won them. But in terms of the car itself, we were looking at, in Spain, at that 3rd sector, thinking we were going into Monaco for the first time in a number of years where Mercedes were then going to be favourites.
Yeah.
And it looked as if they had designed a car that could be on any track and was going to perform at that level. And I never really bought into the whole, could they do the whole season? But there were a lot more people that know a lot more about Formula One than I do that were saying that we were at this stage, we were having a potential team that was going to be able to do a whole season of 1-2s.
Which obviously for a spectator point of view wouldn't have been great, but as an achievement for a team would have been absolutely incredible.
It would have been, and I'm going to be honest, I'm quite pleased it didn't go that way.
I'm quite pleased Max Verstappen.
But yeah, at that stage, you couldn't see, whilst I didn't think it was going to happen, you couldn't really see past it, because as a team, everything seemed to be working in unison, and it was just a fantastic team performance all round. So, we better move on then to the jewel in the crown.
Indeed.
We're now at Monaco. So, I'll start off with Monaco, I think.
I think we should.
And I'm going to go with the young Monegasque driver himself, Charles Leclerc. Now, when you talk about your home Grand Prix, it's not one to remember for him. And especially the fact that it's the Monaco Grand Prix.
In the first kind of...
in a Ferrari.
Yeah, in the first season you're in a car that has a potential to win it.
Exactly. Went out in Q1 and didn't set a fantastic lap. And
They didn't
Ferrari
send him out
didn't send him out again. They remembered Vettel, forgot Leclerc. Not the first time that's happened. That wasn't the worst part of the weekend for Charles Leclerc. How many laps into the race was it? Not many.
I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, he certainly had a short-lived...
yes. So Leclerc then had an accident that brought out the safety car, and well, actually even before that he collided with Nico Hülkenberg on the lap before.
Yeah.
Then hit the wall and ended his race prematurely. Well, actually that didn't end his race prematurely. What ended his race prematurely was the fact that he had the puncture, and then rather than having the maturity to ease the car around, was effectively driving a hot lap on 3 wheels. And
it's never going to end well, is it?
No. So yeah, that's a weekend to forget for young Charles Leclerc.
I don't think Ferrari are ever going to pitch the Reliant Robin idea in an F1
not
car.
for Formula 1. No, definitely not. We've had the 6-wheel Tyrrell.
Yeah, now we're going to have the 3-wheel Reliant Robin.
Nah, I don't think it'll work. 4 wheels for a reason. It's worked. Don't fix something that's not broken.
Very true. And for my point from Monaco was that Hamilton defence. Obviously he had tyres. You can say maybe there was a little bit of drama to it in terms of the radio messages. Was he really in that much trouble? But with the unsafe pit release on Max Verstappen and him absolutely determined to make up the time difference, the 5-second penalty, getting past Hamilton was key, because if he got past him, he probably would have built up that 5-second gap.
No doubt about it.
That would have won him the race. So Hamilton had to defend to save his life on tyres that were just absolutely shredded, and he did it. It was a fantastic defence, and Hamilton has just dug deep at a lot of times this season, and when he's needed to, when the pressure's been on, he steps up.
Yes, and it's not the first amazing defensive performance we've had from Hamilton. It won't be the last.
Nope.
But it is a standout point of the season, and
It certainly is.
And we must say, first time that we had a driver other than Bottas or Hamilton finishing P2.
I know. And we were like, oh, what a relic. Bottas didn't have a great weekend, did he?
Well, it wasn't that. It was more the fact that his race was really ruined by the unsafe release in the pit stop.
Yeah, Yeah, you
'Cause
can.
He then had the puncture and had to come
It
back
just-
around
yeah.
and pit again,
And he was naturally from that. He seems to involve himself in incidents that obviously that one's not his fault.
yeah.
We'll come on to probably a later incident at a certain Grand Prix later on. Probably rounds up Monaco quite nicely.
It does, yes. So we then move on to Canada, and I'm going to let you go first.
So Canada, I suppose the only thing you can talk about is that steward decision and that Vettel mistake that cost him P1. And obviously it gave him the 5-second penalty, and he was not able to extend the lead of more than 5 seconds over Hamilton, which meant, well, actually Leclerc running in third wasn't told by the team, but he very almost closed that 5-second gap,
Yes.
which would have compounded the misery on Vettel, finishing behind his teammate on the 5-second penalty as well. I think he certainly wouldn't have been happy with Ferrari. This was, I think, breaking point for Vettel. Look, everyone has their opinion whether they thought it was a penalty, not a penalty. It was given a penalty, but my main thing from it was another mistake by Sebastian Vettel, and it was another mistake that cost him. And
I think you've got to look at it at the point of he's made the stewards make a decision.
Yeah.
And
it's like a typical thing in football. If you go in for the tackle,
you always say if you make a challenge and you're making the ref make that decision, you're giving him an opportunity.
Yeah.
So
he gave the stewards an opportunity to
exactly.
penalise him.
Exactly. So you can't take away from it. It was a Vettel mistake, and whichever view you take of it, Vettel went off the track, Hamilton didn't, and that's the way the stewards have then looked at it. So I can see, but we had the discussion. We watched the race together.
Yeah.
It's one of the only races this season we've actually watched together.
For the second half of the season, we're actually going to be able to do a lot more. So that's actually enjoyable to look forward to. But yeah,
when we were watching it, I said first perspective penalty. And I think you agreed with me as well. When
I think I agreed, and I think we agreed too. And I think Zach actually from the Fantasy podcast, he was massively adamant. He was like, I don't like races being decided off track. I prefer them to battle there. And I could see his point. So maybe the penalty itself of not a 5-second penalty of Vettel maybe having to give the position to Hamilton would have then led to a better and less argumentative resolution to the problem.
It was more the fact it was a good battle between the two drivers up till that point. And after that, it was Hamilton going. I was trying to think how to phrase it then, but it's a phrase I've used before. Hamilton went into Alain Prost mode. He did what he needed to win. He made sure he stayed within that 5 seconds, and it meant that he didn't attack. My only view from the incident was, by Vettel coming back onto the track the way he did, it stopped Hamilton having the opportunity to attack and have that overtaking manoeuvre available. Whether or not you agree that it was a penalty, you have to agree that that opportunity was taken. So you can see where the stewards were coming from, and I still don't know on that one. I think you see it again and you can look at it and think, actually that's harsh, but then you watch it from a different view and you think,
I think
again.
The main thing we take from it, like we said at the start of it, Vettel mistake makes them make the decision. It happens either way. It was another race that Ferrari should have won and they didn't win.
Nope. And coming on to Ferrari not winning leads to my talking point very nicely. As fortuitous as it was for him, this was Hamilton's 7th win in Canada, and it puts him joint with Michael Schumacher for the most wins in a single Grand Prix, which, look, all of those records that were set by Schumacher, you looked at and you thought no one was going to get near them. Hamilton's already got the pole record off of him.
Mm-hmm.
He's now got the opportunity next season to take the record itself for a number of wins in a Grand Prix. He's matched him, or did he end up beating him for the number of wins in home Grand Prix?
I think he has matched him.
He's matched it. So
And
next season, once again, another opportunity to beat
I think
it.
that might be Alan Prost's record.
It might be actually. Now you're saying.
Yeah. But
I think
obviously there are a load of records that Hamilton
Exactly.
just sees in his way, and he's just blitzing them out the way, left, right,
Exactly.
and centre.
And with the wins that he's got so far this season, he's now within 10 wins of Michael Schumacher's all-time record for race wins. So it was just a fantastic thing to see. And yes, he gets a lot of stick from people and the fact that he's in the best car, so he's going to have the wins. But the things people forget is the fact that Schumacher was in the best car when all of these records that Hamilton's now getting close to
It
was
is
set.
exactly the same. Whenever there is a dominant team, people don't tend to warm to it because people like to see competition, and no one likes to see things being unattainable. And when you have teams who have been so relentlessly efficient as like Mercedes have been, Ferrari were, Williams were in the 90s, McLaren's were at the back end, Red Bull when they were smashing things weren't very popular, Vettel wasn't very popular there. He's had a lot more of a warmer base since his kind of Red Bull days. So yeah, you just have to admire what they do. Whether you like it or not, you have to respect it.
That's the thing, it's looking at it from the perspective of they've been given a set of rules to work with, and they're the ones that have excelled within that boundary. So
Money helps.
it does, and you can argue that with the budget cap coming in, has it been pitched at the right level? But it's one of those. It was amazing to see Hamilton breaking that record.
It was.
And building towards creating his own, because it is now the stage where Hamilton's in that period of his career where the legacy he leaves within F1 will be decided, and you've got certain drivers that people look back on with fondness, and then you've got drivers that people look back on and they're not so much. And it's so the one you look at, the best way to look at that is the battle between Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. You had Senna that the fans warmed to, and then you had Prost, who arguably was as good a driver on his day, that it was a machine at work. He did what he needed to win, and he wasn't as liked. So we're in that situation with Hamilton at the moment where
we certainly are, and it's just
it's one of those, we'll realise how amazing he's been once it's gone. And
but yeah, that was just another dominant performance by, well, he made it a dominant performance after that Vettel mistake. Moving on to France, and Ashley, what was your point from France?
From France, for me, it was just that Mercedes dominance once again. So it was their 8th win of the season, and it was their 6th 1-2. It just showed in a race that wasn't the greatest. It was just a very good performance from the team.
It was just like a procession, wasn't it? And it was an absolutely relentless winning machine. Wasn't it?
At this stage, it just was never ending. They'd won every race up till now.
The end of Mercedes' winning streak seemed a long and distant future. And my point from the France Grand Prix, his home Grand Prix, and this just sums up his season. Obviously, overall since Hungary now, he has only finished half of the races at 3 points, Romain Grosjean, and it just kind of looks like the sands of time on his F1 career might well be running out. And
it does look that way.
yeah, I just, with Roman, I think
I can't tell whether
in our predictions to come, I may give him another seat. Wait, no, you. By the time this comes out, yeah, obviously I put him in the Renault seat, but I think that was more hope, more than anything, because there's something likeable about Roman, but
I don't know. Looking at him now, whether or not he's given up with F1 though. He
has released on Twitter that he's now almost having a look back every day in the summer. He's going to release a picture of a time in his F1 career and with a different team and stuff, so it does seem a bit of a reflective, like a goodbye period.
He just seems to have fallen out of love with the sport, and I don't know whether that's just... Well, I know we've said it before, and we're going to continue saying it because it is a fact. F1 is a confidence sport, and this season he's never had that opportunity to build any confidence. So
here is an interesting one for you. So obviously Haas was meant to be a big move for Grosjean, and it was pushed because when he went to Haas, he was actually in a very good position and a sought after driver, and this was meant to be a big push going into a Ferrari seat, and it hasn't worked out. Could we see maybe 2 years down the line Danny Rick in some sort of similar position? I mean, I think Rick is obviously a better driver than Grosjean.
He is, but the same things have happened in terms of moves. But going back to Grosjean, it's just not been his season, and we keep saying about the fact that he must be one of the unluckiest drivers in Formula 1. But in some aspects, it's got to be...
You make your own luck.
Exactly. K-Mag's not had as many retirements.
And K-Mag's not, especially in the last few races, been in the weaker car and still getting it round.
So it's one of those. Is this the end of Romain Grosjean in Formula 1?
Very much so. I suppose that moves us on to Austria, doesn't it?
Yes, and I think you should go first on this one.
Right, so the only thing from Austria for me was, well, one, we got a different race winner because the Mercedes dominance was broken, and it was broken. It looked like Leclerc, he was going to seal that first win, but him and Max have been fighting all race, and it looked like Leclerc might hold on, and then Max goes for the aggressive overtake. Charles probably just, was a little bit too friendly, didn't fight for the position maybe hard enough that he should have done, and well, Max was able to seal that first win of the season, and it was fantastic. What on-track racing between those two, what an overtake. It took 3 hours, I think, till after the race for it to be confirmed with a decision, and wow, yeah, it was the first of 4 very good races leading into the summer break, wasn't it?
It was, and I'm gonna say it. It was another mistake from Leclerc, though. It was naivety on his part.
Yeah, would you say that's a mistake, or just, like you said, just naivety?
The lap before, Max tried the exact same move, but Leclerc positioned his car correctly and meant that Max had to try and go around the outside. 1 lap later, Leclerc's then defending to the outside line, giving the inside line.
He knew where he was going to try and take him.
Exactly, so I would say it's a combination of 2. Fantastic overtake by Max and brilliant driving from him, but I'm sticking with the fact that that was a mistake from Leclerc. He knew where the overtake was going to be made.
It did see an awakening in Leclerc, didn't it?
It did.
It was a lesson to be learned, and a harsh lesson, not securing that first win for himself, but it is a lesson that he certainly showed he learned in the races to come.
It was, and from that, I know that I've been pro Mercedes quite a bit in this one when it comes to some of my talking points. This one was more the fact that we were able to see that as a team, they are human.
There was a chink in the armour.
We've seen it before, that Mercedes haven't dealt well with high temperatures at high altitude. We had it again. Both cars struggled in the heat in Austria.
And where did Bottas actually manage to get third?
He did. Yes.
Yeah, so Bottas managed to maintain podium, but Hamilton had a woeful day, didn't he?
He damaged part of his wing and then had to have a long pit stop to change it, and it just wasn't a great weekend for Mercedes. And it was actually the reason I've picked this as a talking point is it was something the season needed.
Yeah, like we said before, although you would have respected and it would have been amazing to watch a season that Mercedes just went and absolutely whitewashed,
it would have been
in terms of spectators, and they're already struggling with spectators with it going all pay-per-view now, and Channel 4 having such poor coverage of the Grand Prix.
Yeah.
They needed some form of excitement to kind of pull the crowd back in.
Yeah, and this was the start of that excitement. Up until then, it had been Mercedes, and the talking points were always Mercedes in every aspect. You could talk about something else within the race, but it always seemed to be a side story. Up until this race, Mercedes was the big thing within the season. So it was needed. And this was almost the release called. This happened, this race happened, and then the season sort of went to a new level.
And action just kicked off left, right and centre, didn't it?
Exactly. So,
moving on to Silverstone.
Yes.
And you starting after saying Mercedes proved that they were human, then normal order was restored, but with fireworks.
It was, and my talking point once again is Hamilton.
Do you tend to talk about Mercedes quite a lot here? It seems I'm always talking about Ferrari and you're always talking about Mercedes.
When we look at it, this is what it's been. We have to be honest with how we're reviewing the season.
Yeah.
And up until this point, they were the two big things. But Silverstone, Hamilton was incredible. It was incredible racing from everyone at Silverstone. It was just...
the previous year, which I was at, and actually it was the start of when we started all of this, isn't it, Silverstone? So it was a big milestone for us as well as Hamilton, but that hurt him, not winning that race, especially in the way it did with Agent Kimi locking up and screwing up his race early doors, which he was very unlucky not to come back in later on. But
the race itself was fantastic, and the one thing we need to talk about when you say about Hamilton, that race, is that last lap.
Incredible on tyres that were so old.
30 laps old.
Surely, I mean, obviously Mercedes would have put all the engine modes, everything in his favour to go from there, but still, to put that on and beat Bottas, who had put on a fresh set of slicks, the soft tyre was just mental.
Exactly.
What a lap. But homeboy loves Silverstone, and you can tell what it meant to him.
And it's matched the record for the number of wins in your home Grand Prix.
Certainly did. And my Silverstone point was Verstappen. I mean, he had been the informed driver. We had said, obviously, he is now on 21 consecutive top 5 finishes, but he was starting to look like the informed driver, and he was starting to push. And again, he had an absolutely superb race. Not the pace to compete. The Mercedes still in the race outpaced everyone, but the on-track battling with Leclerc, there was amazing kind of battle in the first half of the race, and then obviously a smaller battle with Vettel before he decided that he would try and do some destruction derby and drive through Verstappen, which obviously immediately came out and said, hands out, my mistake. But again, another Vettel mistake. He really needed the next race. But yeah, it was just... Max Verstappen was absolutely incredible, and incredible to finish that race in the top 5, considering that the damage that was done to the car.
Well, when you see the accident We said it when we did our race review.
Airtime.
How that car finished the race was incredible.
It was absolutely incredible. Yeah. But maybe it was the airtime that helped it, because it kept a bit of momentum going rather than kind of getting stuck and stalling within
it probably
the
did, yeah. In some aspects, it probably did help in keeping the car going.
It's still mad the amount of damage that it must have done to that car.
So, talking of damage, shall we go on to the race that had the most damage in it this season?
I think we should probably, Ash.
So we're now at Hockenheim for the German Grand Prix. And
we hadn't seen rain all season, had we, Ash?
Oh, it'd been quite nice.
We didn't realise what rain would do to these cars. I mean, these are talented drivers. You think a little bit of rain obviously makes conditions difficult, but surely not that difficult, Ash.
No, but it was the first time that they'd been driving the car in the rain with the new aero packages.
So would that maybe make a big difference, Ash?
You tell me what your talking point was, and then I'll find out.
My talking point was my affectionately named spinning in the rain, and
I think that says it all.
That drag strip was a God-given gift, I think, for the drama stakes in F1 races, because it was a little ice rink, and we learnt that they may be very good F1 drivers, but certainly do not put them in the ice skating rink, because they were sliding all over the place. Bar obviously the masterful Kimi Raikkonen from his rallying days, just naturally
carried on as if nothing could happen.
Did a little wiggle, got back on the track. We had Leclerc smash out, we had Hamilton bounce off the wall, we had Hülkenberg with the slowest crash ever out of a Grand Prix, as you saw his hopes of another podium chance painfully slip through his fingers.
If you watch that clip, you see the whites in his eyes. That's how slow he was going. You're able to actually see them.
And we had Carlos Sainz staring down the wall, and that was obviously turn 16, and then turn 1 was getting a little bit jealous of this, so Hamilton had a spin out there, didn't crash out, and Bottas had a spin there and did crash out. Also, was that around about where Sergio Perez went out, or was it more turn 11 where Vettel went out the previous year?
No, Perez went out just after the hairpin.
Okay.
Coming off the hairpin, too much power.
Too much on the power, and went out.
No traction.
We had a lot of retirements, but I'm going to give just an honourable mention before we move on to Ashley's point. This was a turning point, I think, for Vettel and what we will see in the second half of the season. Started 20th, was a terrible qualifying, but managed to kind of manoeuvre himself through the chaos and finish second in that race. And I think it really set a tone for how he went into Hungary.
It did, and my point for this, though, is the main man himself. Max Verstappen, the challenger, emerged from the chaos, and it was at this point where you started looking and you started to think, you know what, he's now got 2 race wins, well, 2 in 3, he's got a chance. It was almost a mini turning point. He'd been consistent through the season, but then this was a race where we looked at it and thought, there is someone here who can challenge Hamilton's crown as the best driver on the grid.
Where Ferraris hadn't maintained their dominance. Red Bull and Max is probably looking at, because again, for another reason, Red Bull always seem to start off the season playing catch up, and then somehow with their developments always really good through the year, they catch up and their car is generally superb by the end of the year. But they're probably frustrated that Ferrari didn't capitalise on those chances, because if you think, if they won in Bahrain, if they won in Baku, if Leclerc was qualified properly, if they won in Canada, then that is points less, and then it is less of a kind of distant thought that Verstappen might be able to catch him.
I'm saying the challenger has emerged. It's still a long shot, but it seems possible.
Yeah.
Which we can all dream, because I've said it, that I think there's an air of inevitability about Hamilton winning the title this season. In this race, had an awful weekend, yet came away with it from it extending his lead at the top of the table because of Bottas not finishing and penalties for the two Alphas. But it made Verstappen look like a different driver, and Hamilton's always been one of those where you would say he is the best driver in the wet on the grid.
Well, up until that stage, I think he'd won the previous 8 rain races.
Yes, so it is one of those where he is seen as one of the best drivers on the grid at this stage. Verstappen challenged him and did better.
So
he won the race.
We said at the time in our review, I think probably one of Hamilton's worst career races.
It was, and it's great to see, because the one thing that I would say from this season as a whole is it's shown that there is a lot of talented youngsters in Formula One. And a few seasons ago, if you had said
the future is bright,
and a few seasons ago, if you had said, oh, who's going to be the top drivers when Alonso, Hamilton and Vettel and Raikkonen
you would have said,
the grid?
yeah, this Max Verstappen kid's all right, but he's a bit reckless. But the driver he's matured into is incredible to see.
So I think this was the race that showed that the most, and definitely makes him that. We've said it before, if there is ever a world where he doesn't win a world title, something's gone wrong.
It certainly has.
But I think that was the race that cemented that as he is a definite future world champion. Up until that point, he had the potential for it, and was he going to achieve that?
Now we look at him as it's a matter of time.
Yes, definitely.
So moving on to the last race, we have got there, guys. Well done. We have got to number 12 of the first half of the season, and that is Hungary. And I believe you start off with Hungary with what is the main talking point from Hungary.
We got to see it. There was all of the talk about it being Max and Hamilton. It's what we wanted. We finally got an on-track battle between the two, and it lived up to expectations.
We weren't disappointed.
And it exceeded it. It walked up to that line of expectation and said, see you later. Went another step further.
It was superb defending, it was superb attacking, and there was superb strategy from Mercedes front, and it was two teams and two drivers going kind of hell for leather at each other. One of them had to win.
They did, and everything was put into it. Hamilton came out of the pits after his first pit stop and said, I can catch him, but look after your tyres. He caught him. They then continued the battle, and it is one of those where you look at it, Ferrari having an awful season allowed it to happen, really. Neither of the drivers having a backup in that race, because there wasn't a second driver there because of Gasly not being good enough, really, across the race weekend, and Bottas,
as proven by the drop.
Yeah, and Bottas being unlucky with Leclerc.
Although now it is in that favour, it is looking like that.
Yeah,
in terms of that, and so it is again. It's more Bottas's fault and not being, or at the very least, it was more 50-50. I think we were quite harsh on Leclerc at the time, but yeah, at the very least,
it was. To be fair.
Indeed, we didn't say penalty necessarily, but yeah, it was. It certainly didn't look great on Leclerc, especially from Vettel's on board. But how things have turned out.
Yeah, but either way, he wasn't in the race. Neither was Gasly, and Ferraris had checked out for the summer break. We got those two at the front, battling that out, and it did come down to team strategy in the end. But we then had 17 of the best laps when put together that I've seen in Formula One.
Yeah,
I can't
of
think
a consecutive back-to-back qualifying. Obviously, he has immense confidence in the car, and that car is incredible. but to do it, to execute it, and to execute it without completely destroying your tyres, to then when you get to Max Verstappen, you are able to easily overtake him and make it easy.
And let's remember,
superb.
he still had fastest lap at that point as well.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until Verstappen pitted for fresh tyres that anyone got close to beating that lap. So it was an incredible drive from both of them. And we've said it before, it was unlucky for Verstappen not to win. But Hamilton did earn that win as well. So yeah, it's exactly that.
And to round off our points, it is a notable nod to the leader of the midfield, and that is Carlos Sainz. And McLaren in general have been superb in this first half of the season, and Sainz' consistency only being 5 points, as bad as what Gasly has been, that has led to him being dropped and replaced by Albon for the remainder of the season. Carlos Sainz has been amazing, and funnily enough in this race just got the job done but ghosted. Hardly ever seen on the screen, but a very good and a very solid 5, which I believe meant that McLaren were top 6 finishes in the last 7. It could be 5 in the 6, but it was just incredible the dominance that they put on when Renault obviously were meant to be challenging, and Haas and around there. McLaren has been
kicked on
nowhere near where McLaren have skyrocketed, and Haas and Renault have plummeted.
McLaren are in that no man's land at the moment between.
They're where Red Bull usually are, aren't they?
Yeah, it's one of those where they are miles ahead of anyone else, but they're not really
challenging
anywhere near to the
and
top
I don't think
3 just yet.
They are realistically aimed to do that. Their first goal was top the midfield, and barring a terrible second half of the season, they will do that in both the drivers and the constructors.
They're going to do that, and I'm going to make the bold claim now. I've got a feeling that we will be seeing a McLaren podium.
Okay.
At some point this season.
I will be excited to see that, but that is a big bold call.
Just because of how both drivers are performing, how that car's improved.
And qualifying as well.
Exactly. I see a McLaren podium.
Yeah.
In this second half of the season.
I'm just going to give one honourable mention in this race to George Russell, who obviously finished in P16, and this was the first time that you could say on merit a Williams finished ahead some of their competitors in Lance Stroll and Giovinazzi. So he has had a fantastic rookie season in terms of the constraints that have been placed on him. Obviously, he's lacked in the development of the wheel-to-wheel action on track, but in terms of his off-the-field and technical knowledge and understanding, I imagine this must have been a really important first half of the season that makes him so vital in the future for maybe a team like Mercedes to be progressing and developing that car.
Yeah, and he, just from the interviews, he comes across as so much more mature than his age would. You'd give him credit for his age. He's fully aware of where that Williams car is in terms of performance available to him, but knows the reason he is in that seat is to develop the car. It's just incredible to watch.
It is.
Especially
really
for someone so young.
We're big George Russell fans, aren't we?
We are, yes.
Right, I think what we're going to do is the view of the season, but I'm going to change it up slightly. Our view of the season, look, you didn't see this coming. I think we're just going to describe it in 5 words so far. I can go first to give you some time to kind of think of 5 words.
Thanks, you're making me sound like I haven't got very good language.
Well, no, I'm making you see like numbers. It's a difficult. You've got to comprehend.
I've got to comprehend. Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
62, 7, 5. So mine is dominance, challenged by the future.
Okay then, I'm gonna go with rookies excelling within
The grid.
No, I didn't want to go for something as simple as that. Rookies excelling and improving consistently.
Oh, that is a nice one. Look at that. We've done quite
I had
quite
to think.
poetic. We
Had to
are.
think, but I got there.
Oh, sometimes we have to think, Ashley. We can't just plod along in life. We have to use our brains sometimes. Right. And I think rounding off our kind of mid-season review, we will look at the winners and losers.
Yeah.
So do we want to, who do you want to go, do you want to do your winners first, or do you want to go me go winners first?
Are we going to do both of them or just go 1, 2, 1, 2?
Oh, okay. We'll go 1, 2, 1, 2. So my first big winner of the season is Max Verstappen. He has shown his consistency and how he's matured as a driver. I think he is the form driver. Is he the form driver on the grid? Because obviously Hamilton's won 8 out of 12.
He's the consistent driver.
Yeah, he's the consistent driver, and he's been absolutely incredible in that Red Bull, and how he's pushed it to limits that I don't even think the team imagined that he could push it to. And he is single-handedly dragging that team to the top of the field, and it has been amazing and really great to watch.
Well, I have to argue against that in some aspect. I'm not arguing with it at all. I agree, but my first winner will be Lewis Hamilton. You said it. 8 wins in 12. Just
10 races on the podium.
Yeah, it's only been Austria and Hockenheim, so 10 podiums. From that high number of second, well, actually, when he's been on the podium, he's only ever been 1 or 2, hasn't he? So it's been. We always say second half of the season is where Hamilton comes into his own. This is the best start to a season he's ever had in Formula One, and as I've said before, air of inevitability of the 6th World Championship being his, because whilst I'm hoping that Verstappen gets close to him, I just don't see him being able to make up that many points, because the Mercedes as a car is just so reliable. You don't see there being a race where Hamilton gets a DNF. So it is one of those where Verstappen is going to have to be consistently outscoring Hamilton, and I don't see him being able to do it.
Bar a couple of Mercedes retirements early on.
Yeah.
And Verstappen capitalising that by getting race wins, you can't really see.
But Hamilton
the challenge coming.
Hamilton is a big winner this year, and it has also been the fact that Valtteri hasn't kicked on in terms of being Valtteri 2.0, but you can't take away from Hamilton what he has achieved so far this season, and undoubtedly what he's going to achieve in the rest of the season and rest of his career.
My second big win of the season is McLaren, and I think from where they were to where they are now is incredible, and just the two drivers working in harmony signs absolute dominance of the midfield, especially in the second half of that first half. Norris's performances as a rookie in qualifying especially, he's been nothing short of really great, and it's put McLaren in a really great spot.
Yeah, can't argue with that. But you saying about the improvement for McLaren, that leads on to my second big winner, because mine is Honda. Because last season, and the season before to be fair, that power unit was awful, but they've turned it around. In that
It's
Red
kind of a
Bull,
marriage made in heaven, isn't it?
exactly, in that Red Bull and that Toro Rosso, the Honda power unit has looked incredible. They've found a party mode.
Big upgrades coming in Spa as well.
There we go. It was needed, because Honda's reputation had
Was on the
taken
bottom.
a big hit recently, and yeah, the improvements they've made, the reliability improvements as well, just in general, I would say they're big winners there.
Right, moving on to the losers, guys. And my first big loser is Romain Grosjean. As previously discussed, he has DNF'd 6 of the races so far. Like I said, probably his F1 career might be over. I certainly can't see him at Haas next year, so it's just whether anyone takes a punt on him later on. But yeah, I think it has been a first half of the season for Romain Grosjean to definitely forget.
Yeah, he won't want to be remembering it for too much longer.
No.
And my first big loser is someone that's going to have the same view of the first half of the season, and that is Pierre Gasly. Now, say what you want about him so far this season, you cannot deny he has got masses of ability.
No.
He is a naturally fast driver.
He did very well in the Toro Rosso, which earned him the right to this seat.
But it was a step too soon for him, and he just hasn't been able to perform. When you're being lapped by your teammate, something's wrong, especially when you're in a race where you haven't had an issue. But for it to happen multiple times is worrying. He doesn't seem to be on that level. Carlos Sainz, 3 retirements at the start of the season, is already only 5 points behind him.
Exactly.
It just hasn't been a good season for Pierre Gasly. And
No, certainly a first half to forget.
Yep.
Which moves me on to my second bit of gloss, and it's kind of a combination between Ricciardo and Renault. Ricciardo, obviously this was a move. Look, he's been honest. Obviously, from coming down from Red Bull, he knew that Renault weren't going to be on that level. But the idea of Renault and their investment in the team has been that they are going to get to that level at the top again, and it has been a massive step backwards from where they were last year. Obviously they still struggle with reliability issues, but the big thing is they cannot get a reliable engine, and if the engine can't get them through the race, you're never going to be competing at the top.
No, and it is one of those, it's not been what was expected.
No.
And to finish off, for me, mine is, it's more of a concept, isn't it, this one?
Yeah.
It's the idea that experience always wins.
Yeah.
That's been thrown out the door this season. The youngsters have stepped up, and it's just been great to see. You can look at it now and say there is a group of youngsters within Formula One that are going to be able to build and actually take the mantle from the likes of Hamilton
and inspire the next generation of drivers, the next generation of fans,
Exactly.
and just mean that the kind of future of F1 is in a really great place. I think we are so excited to see how these rivalries develop.
And yeah, as I say, experience has gone out the door. All of the youngsters have come in and they are pushing, and there's a few of them that I see competing at the top of the sport. And
if they get those 2021 rules regulations right as well, we've got more teams competing at the top, then it just means that we've got an absolute exciting seasons ahead of
It will be.
who's going to win. And it may be going into last seasons of the races going 3, maybe 4 drivers having a shot at the title, which would be
good
amazing.
We haven't had it for a
Absolutely
while,
amazing.
so it'd be good to see.
Certainly would be.
So yeah.
But guys, I think actually, yeah, that rounds things up. That is our mid-season review. So guys, if you liked it, let us know. Give us a thumbs up.
Make sure you press the subscribe button and also click the bell notification. You're going to keep that in now. Really shouldn't have done that.
Blah, 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 blah.
Really shouldn't have done that. 'cause
Sorry,
that will be-
could you just repeat that again?
Make sure you press the subscribe button and also the bell icon so that you get notifications of when our videos go live.
And as you know, guys, they keep coming thick and fast.
They do. We've got a few more coming up throughout the summer break.
We certainly do. Part 3 of that kind of driver predictions coming out, and then the mini series of our driver ratings, mid-season driver ratings. So we kind of look a little bit more in depth than what we have done at the teams and the drivers to date. But guys, comment below what's been your favourite part of the season so far. Did you
Winners
like
and losers?
Yeah, did you like our kind of review? Who were your winners? Who are your losers of the season so far? But yeah, comment below. As you can see, we get in touch. We love kind of talking to you guys and chatting about F1, because that's how this all started. We were chatting about F1 and we're like, let's just put it out there.
Yeah, get other people involved.
Exactly. So guys, F1 fans, remember, keep racing.